All right, welcome everybody. This is Event Marketing Redefined. Thank you for taking time out of your day to show up and chat with us. We think it's awesome that you are here. Event Marketing Redefined, live show and a podcast, and we are on a mission to teach brands how to create meaningful brand experiences that generate revenue and build brand affinity. Today, I have Jeff Ocasio, Chief Creative Officer at Rockway Exhibits and Events. So first and foremost, just to set this up for everybody, I have an absolute ton of respect for Jeff. He is wildly talented, impresses me with his work. He is incredibly knowledgeable in design, technology, and fabrication, which you don't typically find too much with designers. I am fortunate to have worked with him for the majority of my career, and I am fortunate to have him as a major part of our team as the Chief Creative Officer here. Welcome, Jeff. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Wow. Thank you so much, man. That was a great introduction there. I didn't expect that at all. Working with you so long, I would expect a little bit more joking around, but glad to know that
I could do that.
You still appreciate the design. No, we're all good. But Thank you for having me, man. This is exciting. Looking forward to going through this process. This is great.
Awesome, buddy. So the reason Jeff is here, everybody, is like, one of the thoughts that I've had recently is that design and creative work is truly the backbone of the trade show and the event marketing world, right? I've been doing this 12 years. And one thing I have learned, and I know to be true, is our clients, these brands that we work with, are 100% dependent, and they crave creative work from us. They are looking for these ideas to be brought to life. And as much as that takes process, it takes creative people. It takes designers like Jeff. It takes people to be able to bring ideas and concepts to life. And I think it's super cool that he's here, and we're here to discuss all things today about design. So real quick, my stance on all of this is such. I think that design is subjective, and I know Jeff hates when I say that. It is, but my other stance here is that great design, truly great brand environment design, however you cut it, in any type of space, event, retail, trade show booth, great design takes process, it takes listening, it takes vision, it takes talent, and I don't think it's subjective. I think when it's done right, it connects the dots, and it is obvious to everybody in the room. Jeff, what are your thoughts on what I just said, other than you not liking the first piece of it?
No, I couldn't agree more. You know, the one thing I would probably add into that is empathizing, is empathy. It's empathy and meaning getting connected with the brand. And that's part of the process. And that's a major part of the introduction of trying to figure out how to achieve a brand activation, is to really understand what that brand is and get very intimate with it. See it through the eyes of the actual clients, or see it through the eyes of the product. Definitely gets in line with the actual process.
I like that. I like that. No, that's good. So I want to let everybody know in the chat where we're talking here today, ask questions, fire them out there. Roanne will help organize them. I will see them, and we will take questions live for Jeff, questions for myself, whatever you want them to be. We obviously have a script we're running through here. We have things that we're going to talk about, but I want to make sure that anybody, you ask a question, we're going to do our best to answer it. Okay. Jeff, one thing that I think is so pivotal here, and that we talked about, I said listening. You don't hear listening with design. And you want to know where I picked this up on? I picked this up on a while back when you and I were working with a customer that has sort of like medical device instruments, and we were trying to help them plan this big 20 by 40 trade show booth. And you came on a call, and I heard the questions you were asking, and they were so particular about their product, almost to the point of things that I just didn't even pick up on, right? You were so particular listening. And then we go through the process, we do the design, we bring back this like grandiose, hey, look at this booth design. And they like gasped, and they were like, oh, wow, look at the way you put that product. And I was like, the product? I was like, what is he? That's what you're gasping about? So, and they were like, wow, you listened to us. They had issues in the past with the way their product was presented, right? The way it was displayed, the way it was held, the way it was presented. And I think you, in that, to me, was like, wow, you really got to listen to people when they're talking about their product, about their service, about their positioning. So that's why I think listening is important from simply that one experience. But why do you think as a designer that listening is important?
Look, it's the important part of the entire process, in my opinion. Becoming intimate with a brand or becoming empathetic with the brand itself and getting familiar with it, you're going to ask questions and you're going to have to listen to that, because in their eyes it's a different mission that they're delivering. So listening to those details, specifically either verbally or even face to face, seeing people's reactions on certain things that you explain or illustrate by sort of creating it just by the conversation, is a big, huge impact. And then if you can deliver that right afterwards, you definitely nailed it to where you were able to listen, articulate the brand, and obviously show them in a visual element of it as well. So,
and people are really particular about products in particular, more so than service, right? So when they have a product, what are you trying to hone in on? Say you're creating like some kind of retail space or brand environment. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. They're trying to showcase their product and they want people to touch, feel, smell, see. What are you asking? What are you cueing in with them so that you can create this space that they can sell their product in?
I like to treat every environment or the way anything I design in a format of storytelling. Really trying to understand this environment and what it's supposed to do when a visitor is either outside in the aisle or inside the booth. What are we really trying to achieve? Besides the fact that as soon as you walk into any environment, the environment is telling the brand story. But what kind of engagement, what kind of story do you want to tell on the product itself when you're inside that booth, and how do you want to interact with them? Meaning it could be, again, engagement, it could be virtual, it could be AV, it could be, LED panels, anything in those sense like that. It's really understanding the story of that environment. Start with that.
I love what you said about the outside looking in, right? Like you're talking about a person walking through the aisle. Like, how are you going to grab their attention? How are you positioning product? How are you displaying product? I think that's great. Let's roll into trends. People love trends, right? It's always such a discussion when it comes to design. So for the marketers that we have on this call, the event marketers, field marketers, overall just great marketers, give us some stuff to be implementing. Give us some stuff to like look out for and try to implement into our own event marketing.
Yeah, there's so much that I can actually illustrate right now that's following trend, and some old school trends that are coming back as well. From what I've been noticing, depending on the environment itself, I see a lot of multidimensional backdrops, things that are happening where it's just not the first backdrop. There's other layers that are happening in front of it to allow this illusion of depth. It's a very cost-effective way to sort of control the environment and create some more engagement.
So you said multi-dimensional backdrops. Give me an example of something. What's a visual that somebody would see, a multi-dimensional backdrop they should be incorporating?
No, absolutely. So let's just say, for example, we were to go ahead and, we have a space that we need to brand, and it's a 10 by 20 area. But, again, the budget's very short. It's very small. We just got to control that environment because everything else has been eaten up. But it has to have that wow factor. What I would do is, in a situation like that, is I would probably start the base layer as a backlit graphic. Okay. Backlit graphic. And what I mean by multi-dimensional layering is maybe CNC profile cut some elements that allows the little pop of 3D elements, printed graphics, profile cut structures that can sit in front of it, canopies in a very minimal way to create environments. Those are the layers that I'm talking about that create the depth within the design.
Love that. Give me another. So I have a question from Brandy here, right? Which I just pulled up, but I think, Brandy, exactly what you're asking, we will 100% get this. So give me 1 second. We will run into that because it's a piece of the discussion as we move forward. Jeff, what's another trend? Give me an example. What's things that you'd like to see people working into their event marketing, their spaces, their environments?
Natural environments. Sustainability is a big trend that's happening right now. Try to keep things airy within your environment. Try not to be so bulky. Meaning, what I mean by bulky, I'd rather be bold in messaging than actual construction of things.
Yeah.
Utilize components, slimline structures that allow visual impact, graphically. Tall slimline structures. That's a very big trend right now. Very tall vertical graphics, not too wide, more than 3 foot wide formats. It creates a great, interesting timeline, I guess you can say, when you're using it the right way.
Kind of creates a very visually compelling. It's
visual,
something that draws your eyes.
Airy. It's very airy. It's a great way to sort of separate different opportunities within your space. It's a great way to actually keep things airy. But like I said, natural style environments are a very big thing that's happening right now.
What's an example? Give me some examples of natural style. Give me natural. What are you thinking there?
All right, natural.
Tones, colors. What is it?
So wood tones.
Yep.
Wood tones, natural. A lightweight material. Sustainability is very important as well. If we can use, things like that into the designs themselves, it keeps things airy.
Yeah.
But yeah, wood tones is a great way to start bringing in some natural feel from the outside in.
Yeah.
And it actually creates an open feeling, believe it or not, when you can actually separate the existing construction that's within the space with an outside different element to decorate the environment. So
nice. All right. So I got two great questions. I love the questions, by the way. So Brandy, let's get to Brandy's question. Hi, Brandy. How would you advise laying out a booth, the graphics for a company that has multiple brands without it becoming overwhelming? So can I first say, Brandy, this is a problem. Okay. This is something we've dealt with, had patience with. People have like subsidiaries, sister companies, brother companies, cousin companies, the whole 9 yards, and they got to get them all in one space. They're sharing the cost. They're trying to all gain some kind of benefit. Jeff, how would you do this? What would your advice be to somebody with multiple brands in one booth space?
Embrace negative space is my opinion.
Okay. And hold on. What is negative space mean?
So
trick me up.
Again, depending on the amount of brands that we actually have to put into the design, for me, let's just say we have 10 sponsors within this company, or 10 products, and we have to put it everywhere. And the booth space what's the example again? The booth space, Matt?
Just saying, if it's a trade show booth, the graphics, okay, doesn't matter size. I'm assuming it's a little bit larger if you have multiple brands. We'll say a 30 by 30 booth, right? And it's got multiple brands. How do you do it without becoming overwhelming?
You don't make it overwhelming. You want to embrace the negative space. And what I mean by that is, don't pack everything all in one visual area. Now, if we're working with a backdrop, let's say, for example, and we want to design that backdrop to have the main primary logo as well as several other companies, you want to use those companies in a very stylistic way. You don't want to line them up completely around. You want to scale them out to where there's more negative space.
Can't have logo.
You just can't. So you have to structure your design mechanics in order to format those logos to fit the way they should fit. If you design it in a way where you embrace negative space, and what I mean by negative space, again, it's the whites. It's nothing in between that's causing distraction. If you keep that open and you allow your logos to sort of bleed into your design mechanics, you'd be surprised how a minimalistic way of scaling those logos down will work.
What about like some theming, right? Because I know, like, okay, if you have multiple brands, do you have a main brand, right? You can't, you seemingly can't subdivide the booth 4 ways because then everybody just knows what you're doing, right? So in terms of space, like I always think, like, first of all, the booth can't look like a mix mosh. It can't look like a mix mosh with a bunch of colors and brands. It's got to be themed. It's got to have something that is cohesive. It needs cohesiveness, but then clear division of these different brands or subsidiaries that are inside that space. Very challenging to do. We have tried it. We have done it. We have fought that battle numerous times. Great question from Brandy. Very tough, but I would say, yeah. Let's go to another question. I love that they're coming in here. Brenda Jackson, trade shows are showing more hanging banners recently. Because of the cost of rigging, we have not proceeded to do this. Should we? Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
there we go.
That's a great question. It is. For me, hanging signs if hanging signs are not being used to be part of your environment, I just think it's almost a waste of money. That's just my opinion,
right? Like, has to flow.
I mean, have you seen a booth where the hanging sign was up at max peak 25 foot high, and then their booth is more like 10 foot high? That sign is lost. It's completely lost. There's no connection. So
it's just there to be there almost. It's just
correct. For me, hanging signs are useful if you do want to utilize the real estate up high. Okay, if you want to do that. My personal opinion is, if you're going to put a hanging sign up there to get some brand awareness, definitely utilize your footprint. If you can get away with a 20 by 20 sign and bring it up, if in your booth is a 20 by 20, get a 20 by 20 sign. If your 10 by 10 sign is something that you can use, I would definitely bring it into the level where your booth can
bring it into the space.
Correct, exactly.
I love that.
And to answer your question, you don't need a hanging sign to get the wow factor. Let's utilize the structure heights of where we can get that wow factor as well. And
Jeff,
again,
I think that's really, like, with what you're saying, it's a great answer, because essentially what you're telling people is like, hey, don't just put a hanging sign just to put a hanging sign, Brenda, right? Yeah. Like, it's not a matter of, yes, the cost is more expensive, but it's about the environment that you're designing. And, to Jeff's point, like he's saying, if you have a 20 by 20 booth and you're going to have a sign up high, we should have some sort of large enough sign at 20 foot by 20 foot to be in that space. Whereas if you have a 10-foot sign, you should really drop it down into your space and make it really more of the environment. I'd say, to answer your question, I'd probably be thinking about what is the overall goal of that space? What does the environment look like? But don't just add a sign just to add a sign, right?
Yep.
Okay. One of the trends I love, Jeff, that I've noticed as on the trend, I love those neon letters in the grass walls, making a statement, value proposition, a problem you solve. I think when you mix a trend, all too often, I say this all the time, trade show booths in a row of them, they get lost. It's a sea of nothingness. It's a sea of no differentiation. They're all just like a parody of each other. Mix of white, some structure, a grass wall with, it's like follow the sign of retail, follow the sign of like design and what's out there. That's a trend for me that I think is huge. If you have a value proposition, if you have a problem that you're solving for your customer, build a grass wall, build a wood wall, build
perfect area to show your mission. Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, and plaster that bad boy up there.
Those trends are very popular. I'm sorry to interrupt. Very popular. But again, the execution has to be unique, and it can't be something that blends into something that you've seen before, because you'll probably end up seeing those trends like the grass wall and the neon light more so than you think. So you want to use that. You want to use that technique in a very classy way. You just don't want to give it as a backdrop. And some people want it as a backdrop for a social media opportunity, but really popular as well. Yeah, I agree.
Love that. Another question from Brenda, because we're taking questions because we are trying to support questions here. Okay.
We're supporting questions here.
What is your impression of using a bank of monitors for a backdrop? This can be updated as the company grows, but would it look too bulky?
So here's an example. If you have a 10 by 20 backdrop and you want to use a sea of video monitors to create this environment, I'm going to tell you no, in my personal opinion. I'm going to say, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't do it, because it all depends on budgeting.
Yeah.
If the monitors to create that is a huge expense, then I would probably suggest doing more of a 100-inch LED TV to put on the back wall and then frame it out to where that's the focal point. That's a cost savings right there. And these 100-inch TVs are so dynamic that if you put it into its environment, it's almost its own video screen, pretty much right there. We're dealing with 8-foot high restrictions. So you go bigger than that and you want to have more visual impact, that's where those monitors really come into play. But again, if you want to have an immersive environment, that's where monitors like that, seamless monitors, LED panels, really create the immersive feel once you go into a different room or a different part of the event or the exhibit itself.
Gotcha. So part of what we're talking about is value proposition and your problem solving as a company, and plastering that up in your trade show booth, your branded environment, at your event, your user conference, your summit, whatever it is you're hosting. So let's talk about some of the biggest mistakes. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see in design? Let's just talk trade show. Let's go trade show, because that's, you know what I mean? That's the meat of this. Let's talk trade show. What are some of the design mistakes you see, and what should people be avoiding?
That goes right back to the storytelling. What's the story, and what mood board we're going to be creating from there, right? The use of color is important. The use of color when you're doing an event design or any graphic design, the use of color is the most important thing when it comes down to the feeling you're trying to create. So for example, when it comes down to tones, while warmer tones create more of an engaging environment. So like I said, understanding what that story is. What if the story
warmer
is
tones? What do you mean by warmer tones?
Warmer tones. You want to stay more on the reds, the oranges, the saturation of those reds. You want to be in that family.
Yeah.
The cooler tones create more of an interactive environment. It's more interactive. So cooler tones will be more your blues, your teals, your really, really cool feelings. It creates that interactive environment. So for example, if I was doing an event and the event was very technology based, I would definitely keep my tones within those blue tones, keeping that theme going all the way across and creating that path to where people are feeling every time engaged. And then you use different aspects or abstracts to create different feelings every time you go through.
Yeah.
So,
I think is interesting about that. One of my biggest problems, just from a trade show standpoint, is we design and build these structures, and then it ends up in a graphic designer's hands, not always our hands, sometimes clients' hands or another graphic designer. If you don't have experience in graphic design when it comes to trade show booths, more architecture, event, right? Type signage in larger areas and really environments, man, you can really botch it up, because the idea is when you're designing a structure with graphics and colors and tones and lighting, you're bringing it all together. It's colors, it's graphics, it's lighting, it is the tones, the finishes, metal, wood, trim, everything. It has to come together. It has to come together to be a full brand experience. And I think it needs to be uniquely you. It's like I said, trade show booths are all parodies of each other. It's like a little mix of white, a hanging sign, maybe a demo. They're all like a little bit decent, but you look down a line, you're just like, you all look like the same company, right?
Right. Correct.
How do you stand out to be uniquely you? So like an example I try to give people is if I put a bag over your head, right? And I drove you somewhere and you know where we're going. And I took your bag off your head and I removed all the logos off the wall and you were inside a Starbucks and I took the bag off your head, you'd be like, yeah, I'm in Starbucks. You would know. Yep. The whole thing comes together. Same for like Cheesecake Factory. If you just popped in a Cheesecake Factory and there was nothing on the walls that said Cheesecake Factory, you'd be like, I'm at a Cheesecake Factory. They've created a branded environment. Everything ties together. There are no loose ends. It's not just putting white in this space or that. It is completely thought through. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes I see day in and day out is the way the environments are finished per se, and kind of a lack of thought being put into that. And I know we're trying to take a lot of control with our customers by having that conversation and say, hey, and moving them in the right direction, helping them, more of a resource if we don't take it over from them.
No, it's a really good point because, fortunately, you do get challenged, when you're working with clients and, within, with the company itself, they have their own design department. And like you said, Matt, sometimes not everyone has the background of designing large format printing or understanding what obstructions are in real life type of design. That's one of
designing
the best
an
parts
environment.
About it's exactly what it is. And that's one of the best parts of the discovery phase is really understanding where are we going to be focused on as far as the story is concerned and where does it start? And once you start with your design mechanics, that's when all the other great elements start to happen. Your surfaces, your textures, you understand what that mood's going to be, and you're creating this mood board that you're presenting that's close to real life that could possibly happen.
So I think this is an interesting question from Mel. Beyond products and services, how do you tap into the emotions of the company and their culture? So I want to preface this saying I'm not sure we've ever done anything that would tap into their culture unless it becomes a part of the conversation, right? Like, do mission and values become a part of what people are trying to present on the show floor, right? Because when you're talking to a brand, what makes you uniquely you? You're having that conversation. How important is mission and values? How important is culture? What they believe? Is it statements, how they stand out? Are they quirky? Are they fun? Are they serious? What is their vibe and their energy? Jeff, how would you, maybe say if we were talking to a company and we were designing them a trade show booth, right? And they basically said like, hey, we're engineers, we're tinkerers, right? Like this is our nature. It's who we are. How might you tap into that in the design of a trade show booth or a branded environment?
Wow. Again, really getting deep into the culture and the brand is understanding what that is. So let's say you have an architect company or engineer company, or we're going to do a trade show, design for, and they love to tinker. I would love to have live demonstrations, something to where they're in their realm of, can you imagine if we're doing I think of engineers, I hate to say it because I love engineer drawings. I do. And I love engineer process. But I think of engineers as these machines, right? And they're in this huddle. And can you imagine they're in in an environment where that's creative, where they're just the minds behind things happening, and they're sort of tinkering. It has to be fun, and you have to connect. You have to connect with your visitor when you're telling the story. So, if engineers are known to be very eccentric to where they're detailed and they're really precise, why not make something fun out of that and see how that feels and figure out how that plays with a connection to people that are under that type of pressure almost, or maybe have a little fun with it to where they're like, well, you know what, this is the reason why you're engineers, because we need, something like that in a sense. But I wouldn't try to make it so focus based where unless that was the mission. But it starts with the story, and of course how it progresses from there. But for me, like I said, engineers, they're fun, but I would probably put them in an environment where they're a little more little different.
And I love what you said about connecting to the visitor, right? Like you're saying, like we would do live demos, we would do live tinkering, we would play
Yeah.
into who they are as a company, as people. I think to answer Mel's question, it's like it's playing into your strengths. If your
Yeah.
culture is who you are, right? It's like you need to play into those strengths. Jeff, any other big mistakes you see in either branded environment design, event design, trade show design? I mean, is there any mistakes that you see that you'd love to tell people to avoid?
Just don't overpack the environment. Again, it doesn't have to be bulky walls or there's so many different systems out there which we utilize when we design that allows us to create really free flowing environments. We tend to want to follow the perimeter of an environment, but yet we don't want to do anything that's offsets from the walls. Believe it or not, imagine going down a hallway of an event where you're almost in a very streamlined hallway, and behind those walls are different interactive opportunities, but it's visibly open. It's not so bulky. It's opportunities for sheer fabric where there's a curiosity that can possibly happen. Keeping that momentum going all the way through and telling that story, I think it's what's important. But for me, when I design, I don't design with the mindset of, what's your budget? If I connect with your brand and your story, my mindset is how can we develop this in a very cost-effective way, but yet very strongly engaging for a visitor, depending on what their
Yeah,
budget is.
I like that. One piece I know that we want to get to here and talk about is how to work with a designer, right? Because a lot of people, as a marketer, you have to work with designers, whether for graphic design, whether for your trade show booth, your event, your campaign. I mean, you have to work with designers for a lot of different things. So I have two stories on this. I've fortunate enough to have been doing this long enough to basically work with designers my whole career. And I think in terms of finding success, how you find success with designers is by being detail oriented and giving boundaries, but not restricting their creative juices. You can't. The minute you start restricting a creative, you're never going to get the best possible outcome. So let me give you two stories. One is when I got married, we were trying to decide on the food, right? We got married at a place where I knew the chef. And it's like this menu and you're digging through it. And it's normally like a point and shoot. Hey, I want mac and cheese. Hey, I want this. Oh, I want that. Well, it just kind of dawned on me. I'm like, man, Chef Mike is incredible. I've eaten his food for 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I just asked him, I said, hey, Chef Mike, like, what if I said I want 4 stations, a starch, a meat, a this, a that? This is kind of what I'm envisioning. And like, you cook whatever you want. You make the menu. I want the food at the wedding to be incredible. I want people to love it, keep going back for more, and set all these parameters. Well, that's what I ended up doing. He was like in shock. He was like, what? I'm like, yeah, you choose. You make the menu, make it your own, be creative. Food turned out incredible. For the last however many years, people always say, hey, I remember the food at your wedding. The food was great. It's because I didn't restrict the chef. I didn't say,
right,
point and shoot, make this, do that, get this here. But I didn't restrict him. I let him be creative. I let him do what he does. Okay. The second story, the Rockway logo, our logo as a company, right? We outsourced it because we didn't want to have an emotional tie to it. So I found somebody that I knew was creative, found somebody that I knew would trust to be creative and do a good job, had done our homework. Second thing is, again, set boundaries, gave parameters, did not give instruction. It's like putting a fence. You put a fence and then you let them play inside of that fence, right? We wanted it to be bold. We wanted to have set colors. We wanted it to be an emblem. We wanted it to be able to stand alone. We had all these different things, gave it to them. First design pass, nailed it, home run. First one, I said, I don't need to see another logo. This is it, because we let them be creative.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts for people? Those are my thoughts working with people is set the parameter, give the details, don't restrict them. Don't restrict the creativity. Give them the opportunity to sort of fail, swing and miss, but let them be creative. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, you definitely don't want to create or have any restraints for any designer. You want them to be as loose as possible, but with boundaries, like you said. I'll give you an example. Internally for us, we have a process to where we get all the detailed information right off the bat from the AE themselves. they're qualifying, they're getting the information, they're really digging down what they can to start the process to get it over to the design. It all starts there. The information right away, it's what sets the boundaries. What I like about, internally for us is that we don't create any kind of restraint to any of our designers. We all have different designers that have different styles. And that's the best part about it, is understanding what those styles are, to where we can understand when a design request comes in, we know who to assign to. But it's all about the detail in the beginning. Bring in the detail, set the boundaries, the budgeting, the examples that you might want to present that you took on, from the call or from the visit, things that you can provide that can help resource them to speed things up as well.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what you don't want to do is just say, here, this is what I want, this is what I want. But then get mad or get disappointed, I guess you would say, when a design is not that creative, when you set those kind of strong boundaries.
Yeah.
Again, create the boundaries, let the designer go free, because if you have the trust in the designer, I can guarantee they can see your vision and create something that's going to actually flow with your story.
Yeah, I love what you said. You do have to try to cast your vision. If you're going to work with a designer and you were looking for the best possible outcome, be organized, know what you're looking for, organize your vision, put it all to paper, give it to them, and then give them the creative freedom to bring to life what it is that you can't, per se.
Designers appreciate it. They do. They appreciate
it.
that. They really do appreciate the detail when it comes down to a first design pass, because our goal and our mission is to always try to nail that feeling, that opportunity. And what we want to do is make sure we nail down those details right from the beginning before we go into heavy design.
All right. So I have another question here. Again, we love questions. We want to answer questions. So I have two, actually. One is from Nicole, and she said, when using an exhibit design service for the first time ever, what kind of timeline do you suggest a complete consultation, concept, final product, etc. will it take? How far out should conversations and planning begin to ready for a future event? Nicole, that is an awesome question. And I would honestly say, depending on the size, right? The size of the event, trade show booth, whatever it may be, like 6 months is just a great timeline, in my opinion, because it really allows you to do a deep dive, is what you said, like the complete consultation, right? That complete consultation is really saying, hey, Nicole, why? Why are you exhibiting? Why are you putting on a user conference? Why are you doing a brand activation? Let's lock that in. Okay. Why? Now let's talk about, okay, like who's the audience? Who's the customer? Why are they there, right? Why are they attending? Why are you going to them? Why are they important to you? What's the value proposition you have? Everything about that customer you want to learn. And then you're going to work into your brand, and you're going to talk about what makes your brand unique, what makes your brand different, what makes your brand you. Then we're going to talk about engagement. We're going to talk about experience. What's the experience you want them to have? What do you want them to feel? How do you want to engage with them? Let's say it's a trade show booth. They're walking into your trade show. I'm sorry, this is a very specific example. She asked about trade show booth. They're walking into your trade show booth. Well, what do you want to happen if they're ideal? And lastly, we're going to talk about goals and objectives, right? So like that consultation, if you're doing it the right way and you're mapping all those things, and then you're designing from that, and you're understanding the construction process. The last piece is understanding pre-show, during show, and post-show implementation. What does your pre-show marketing look like, right? Are you getting sales and marketing on the same plan for this trade show? Is your sales team or whoever's showing up to this trade show, are they on the same page? Do you have the same messages? Do you have the same questions? Is everybody on the same page, or is everybody just flying in and it's just a total free-for-all? Because I've seen that too. It doesn't work. During the show, you're going to have a morning meeting. You're going to have a recap meeting at the end of the day. How are you organizing your leads? How are you going to follow up with those leads? Your post-show, whole nother thing. How are you going to market to those leads? Are they top of the funnel leads? Are they mid? Are they bottom? Are you nurturing them? Is it just relationship building? Like, if you want to do it the right way, 6 months is a great timeline. But another way to answer your question is you probably get it done in 90 days. Like if you wanted, you probably get it done in 90 days. Yeah. But depending on the timeline, I would say for first time, depending on the size of the event, if you want to do it the right way, I'd say 90 days to whatever, 120, 150 days in that space somewhere. It's probably great. We have another question. I love these questions. This is great. This is a big one. Whew, hold on. I gotta read this. It's anonymous attendee. What about manufacturing? We're a company that manufactures transportation electronics. Okay, so radios, surveillance cameras, video management software, media players, and microphones. We have 30 engineers on staff. Not only that, we support a variety of vertical markets from school bus, motor coach, transit buses, commercial buses, agriculture, and construction vehicles. Okay, so this is manufacturing. They make the electronics for transportation vehicles, buses, motor coach, transit, commercial, agricultural, construction. In this situation, what would you recommend for trying to tell the whole story while providing a booth that is specific to each vehicle and the products that support that vehicle? Sometimes it's the same product, but the way they use the products hits similar but different customer pain points. Anonymous, this is an awesome question. And this is something that I would love to dive in. Jeff, you can interrupt me whenever, but I have a lot of thoughts on this, right? This is such a cool question. So essentially, I would say, if you're hypothetically grouping it into one trade show and you're telling me that at that trade show, you are going to have the type of clientele that utilize all of your manufactured products in all of these different vehicles, that's one thing. If it's a niche trade show, maybe an agricultural or maybe something in the bus type of trade show, right? Go all in on that. I think that's, I don't want to say it's obvious, but I think that's obvious. If it's like a bus motor coach type of trade show, go all in on those products, that customer, how they use it, why they do it. I would have a mock bus with the products built in. I would be using them. I would set up a scenario. I would create an environment around that.
Exactly what you're saying there, in separate. So utilizing your footprint, you create little small scenes to where the product can relate to. So you utilize your space, keeping things open, but those
Well,
small
you said
little
small
sections,
scenes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I had to. I love what you said there, small scenes, because what I was just thinking was, okay, I think really the question is like, let's say we had to put everything into one. I'm thinking like you said earlier, tell a story. Maybe it's a little bit of like a circular roadmap and there's a stop.
Yeah.
There's an agricultural, I don't know what kind of, what kind of vehicle would be agricultural, but we'll say it's there and it's in a grass field or something. And then there's a bus at a stop or something like that. There's a motor coach in a certain, there's a construction vehicle on site, and each one tells its own story. You know what I mean? It's segmented areas.
And products like that, it's just the best opportunity to sort of create those scenes, engage your senses, put yourself in that environment, to be able to get familiar with the product, bring outside elements inside the room to where you start to tie in the entire scene. But creating those separate little sections, create the chapters of your brand and your product. And that's what I mean by embrace the negative space. Don't overcomplicate it with so many walls. Really try to create the scenery to where people can flow through it the way it should.
And what I love about this, I'm going to keep on this question. I'm going to pound this drum here is, so, it said, in this situation, what would you recommend for trying to tell the whole story while providing a booth that is specific to each vehicle and the products that support that vehicle? So to answer that question, I would say for each vehicle and the products that go in it, what problem and not what problem do those products solve? What is the advantage of those products? What is your value proposition of those products? Why do those people like those products? Why do they buy them? Why do they choose that product? I would know that. And I would pull on that string in the demonstration, in the way that they're laid out, in the messaging that's around that product. But you have to know that, right? Like, why do they use your electronics? Your transportation electronics? I'm assuming these are sold to a manufacturer that are making these vehicles. Why are they choosing your product? What is the competitive advantage of it? What makes it different? And I would understand that, and I would find a way to tell that is the story, in my opinion. Because if I walk up and I'm manufacturing vehicles and I'm looking at electronics that we're going to put in our buses, in our school buses, like maybe it's like a noise barrier in school bus, not electronic, but school buses are noisy. I'm trying to figure out what's the best product for our buses. What can I put in there and why? And how are they going to be an advantage to our customers? Because we're selling these buses.
And it's that feeling. It's that feeling you just said right there. It's that advantage. What is that value proposition? You need to create that feeling within those scenes. And when you're highlighting product for those buses or anything like that, you are telling, again, you need to connect with that product. So it's the story. It's exactly what you're saying, man.
Yeah. And that's cool, because I do think what's nice about doing this is that it's an actual like installed product, right? Like essentially you can show it being utilized. You can create a visual for them. You can put them in the scenario of using the electronic. That's what I would be thinking. Yeah. Tell the story of why this electronic is valuable, or the value prop. And I would also put them in the scenario of doing that. If you have an isolated trade show, say it is a school bus trade show. Let's just say it's a school bus trade show. You go all in. You know what I mean? You go all in on the school bus, the problems that your device solves, how it goes in. You know, I would have that tell the entire story. It could be almost look like a Sesame Street with a road and a bus, and go full themed, or, you know. But then if you're trying to tell the whole story, I think it is saying, okay, holistically, what is this story that all these products kind of do? Who are we as a company? And kind of walking through step by step and making sure those products have their moment. I love that question. Great question from Anonymous. I think this kind of pulls us into kind of what we wanted to talk about towards the end here, Jeff, because we're coming up on 47 minutes. But in our industry, people love the word immersive and engaging brand experiences, right? Everyone's like immersive, engaging, experiential, all these words. So I think immersive, let's talk about immersive and let's talk about engaging. And then I kind of want to get your thoughts on like going about creating these brand experiences in that sense. Immersive to me is like uniquely yours, right? It goes back to the Starbucks and the Cheesecake Factory example. You need to be building a trade show booth so that it's uniquely yours. That means the customer is immersed in your world. It cannot be a parody world. It cannot be where it's like, it kind of looks like the trade show booth over there. There's just a little more red in this one, you know? And then engaging to me is some of the things you talked about, eye-catching, technology. How are you engaging me from outside the booth or inside or at the event? How are you catching my eye? And I think the last piece that people don't talk about enough is meaningful. This stuff, if you're going to meet face-to-face and you're going to do trade shows and do live events, it should be meaningful. Your face-to-face time, if you're a brand and you're putting yourself out there, do it in a meaningful, authentic way. And that to me is all about the product and the service presentation. How are you presenting that to me? And if it doesn't drive me value, and if it doesn't educate me, and if it doesn't teach me something or convey your value prop, it's really not doing much for me. It's not meaningful, because I'm there for something. I'm there to learn something. I'm there to understand how just product or service can benefit me. So that's kind of my take. What are your thoughts on those? What are your thoughts on immersive? Like I said, uniquely yours. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, immersive can be taken in several aspects. Immersive could be where it's a wow factor. Immersive could be where it's and then going back to what I said, multi-layering effects, where there are different elements within a standard backdrop. For me, immersive it's about telling the story. You have to create the story, and you have to deliver that story across the board when you're walking through an immersive environment.
That's kind of theming too, isn't it, Jeff?
It's theming, it's messaging. It could be a hard stop where it takes a break from a theme, where it's like, whoa, what was that about? It's a whole bunch of things, but it's about telling the story. Because you can walk into any event or any venue, and if you walk in, you ever notice when you don't know where you go, but there's a right signal to the left over here, but you completely missed it. That's because it wasn't properly placed. It wasn't part of something where you can see it visually, where it's telling the story, where you're following the path. Engage our senses, guys. It's not just visual; it's also sound. It's our senses as well. Smell. Depending on the type of show that you're in.
I love the sound one.
That definitely utilize all these senses where, if it's not something, a big elaborate backdrop where it's engaging, maybe it's a sound that is engaging you. A black room where it's an echoing effect coming in. Wouldn't you want to? I want to go in there.
It's like ambiance.
It's ambiance, but you can't see through it. It's this curiosity. You're creating these senses where people just want to see what's going on. I mean, as far as technology is a big one, Matt. I mean, if the budget is there, technology is a big one, because I mean, what's going on right now with 3D mapping and for any kind of product event. Let's say, for example, we're doing a product line event. Instead of shipping all our product lines to put on racks and everything like that, do an actual silhouette where we can do 3D map of all their product onto them, clothing line. to where there's a
So
user
3D map that
interaction.
we're mapping on versus having all the
Exactly.
products, what you're saying.
Exactly. So if you have your whole product line where you want to just click on that image and it maps onto an actual 3D model or a mannequin where you can project that,
Yeah.
you can see that live. You can see that product live. You're saving yourself so much on your product delivery. It's more technology based, but then you also have more freedom.
Yeah.
You can create those impacts where if someone picks one item and it projects to the model, maybe that's a winner of something. Who knows? Maybe that starts to illustrate something else to the next version of the scene. Things like that. Visitor interaction is important. Definitely engaging in the points like that, because if it's too much where it's all mechanical, where you're flowing through, you want to have some interaction, some certain points where you're breaking through different chapters. Almost like someone giving you the synopsis before you go into, before you go to the next one, or some, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But
I think even recently I was on a call with one of our account executives, and we were talking to one of our customers that uses a large LED screen wall inside their trade show booth. And a big piece of the discussion was, what can we change up on that screen? How creative can we get just on that large 20-foot by 10-foot or 15-foot screen on that wall? What can we play up there, display up there, showcase up there to engage somebody, and then be like, oh, wow, what are they showing? Like, those kind of thoughts for me with engaging is how you draw people in. And essentially that goes back to the customer, right? So you can't just show BS up there. Like, you can't just put a thing of Barney dancing. I mean, you could, but like, it has to go back to the customer, has to go back to why they're there, what they're interested in, what they're looking for. That to me is engaging. And it's a specific example, I think, of how to use video walls and having a discussion in that sense. One thing I want to go back to, I love what you said about ambiance. Love that, because we're talking about immersive and engaging, and ambiance, senses, music, smell. I am drawn to like lounge type atmospheres, music, a little bit of low lighting, right? There was actually a trade show booth at the KBIS show. They had this whole like kitchen ambiance with like music and wine, and they were doing food and wine tasting, and there was somebody there with a headset on, and they were having conversation. The mood was, it was just exceptional. You felt like you were in Napa Valley at a kitchen with a glass of wine, hanging out. It tied right into their product, what they sold, but it's like, how can you create an ambiance? How can you create that immersive and engaging experience for people? And I think it's all goes back to the product, or the service goes back to the customer. I think with that one, they nailed it. They created this, they sell appliances. Perfect. Right. They created a kitchen scene. So I love what you said about that, because ambiance is just a big one for me. Nice.
Absolutely.
Last piece, we got like we got a couple minutes, but I'd say let's close on this. We've talked a little bit about it, but technology, what role does technology play here, and how can people benefit from utilizing it at their events? Give me a couple examples.
Technology for me, technology is a big part of it, especially when it comes down to marketing, or virtual. Virtual is a big one. That's a big, huge technology side of things. And what I mean by virtual is it's not just your virtual events. It's a virtual event that's designed to actually have custom looking brand environments within your virtual space. That's a big, huge one. AI representatives at shows, typically silhouettes of people that can actually be projected, Zoom wise. It's a big one, guys, where there's AI projection to where the person you need to speak to is actually there virtually, but not physically there. Those are big things that are happening right now. Technology is a very big part in what we're going to possibly do when it comes down to your standard trade show, standard branding environment, as well as your interactive, engaging part of it as well. Technology plays a very important part when you need to interact with someone in a very saturated, very virtual way. It takes you away from the environment or realm that you're in. Technology has a big part of it. You can really bring someone into a different time.
One thing I've seen more and more sporting events, is the use of LED walls, is the use of the flow of the LED walls. You had talked earlier about having like tall, skinny LED panel towers that are separated from each other, but they flow through. They create,
it could be a waterfall effect. It could be a waterfall
yes,
effect coming down. It could be where
using separated pieces that are connected,
separated pieces.
Yes,
exactly. Exactly. So technology is a big part in visual impact. That's the way I look at it. If you want to be you want to have that consistent visual impact every time someone comes through, integrate technology into your brand, and you can actually sense that imagery based on the person that comes through. Like, it's mood senses are a big thing when it comes to technology too. They can create the environment for you depending on where you're flowing through.
What's a mood sense? We got a couple minutes here. I want to know what a mood sense is.
Yeah, mood senses. Well, I don't want to go too far into because I'm still actually learning myself. But Bill Gates actually had a home where when he walked in, he I don't know if he still has it, where it actually controlled the environment of how he felt. Wow. It was huge. And it's out right now where there's different things and levels of the way we are being read to our technology. So when you walk in right now, when I walk into my apartment, I'll give you an example. I have a technology to where it knows what mood I'm in. And what I mean by that is I'll just say, play certain type of music, and it'll know what kind of lighting senses.
With the lighting. Yeah, change. That's amazing. Right. Yeah, very cool.
So
that's ambiance.
I know it's ambiance.
It's ambiance.
It's a little interactive and it's a little cool, I guess you can say, but take advantage of technology and really bring it into your brand, because it could give you that leap forward that you're looking for with your messaging. Yeah. It could definitely give you that wow factor and say, here I am, this is what we do, and constantly keep that updated and refresh it.
What I like about technology, and I'll kind of cap this up for us here. What I really like about technology is, again, people are after immersive, people are after engaging. I think technology does both. I think when you use it the right way, it can help you and allow you to be immersive and engaging at the same time, which I think is super cool. All right, we're winding down. I want to be super respectful of people's time. Jeff, thanks for showing up. Thanks for geeking out. Thanks for talking about the design work that we do, trying to help our community here work with designers, trends to follow. We got some great questions. I thought the questions were awesome today. I truly enjoyed. I love the manufacturing one with the electronics that Anonymous asked, because it was very detailed, and I love that we had to kind of run through that. That was a blast. To everybody that showed up today, thank you so much. Like, we really appreciate you spending time. We love the questions. Thank you for taking an hour out of your day to talk with us about event marketing, branded spaces, design. We thought it was, I really enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoyed the questions. That's a wrap. This is Event Marketing Redefined. And we're on a mission to teach brands how to create meaningful brand experiences that generate revenue and build brand affinity. I hope you took a ton of value from this episode, and thank you for showing up. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.